that balance between expenditure reductions and levy increases. And I think keep that in the back of your mind as you've reviewed program reductions, staff reductions so far. So keep in mind as we're going through the revenue projections, what that balance is going to look like. And, as we said in the beginning, we know that we're not going to cut, and we can't cut $3.5 million. That's not responsible in terms of the administration and putting together a budget. So we're seeking that balance. You're getting answered, Barb? Go ahead.
I almost dropped it when I grabbed it. I pushed the big button and it went crazy. So, thank you. Sorry about that. Fund balance utilization. I spoke about it briefly that we don't have a lot of fund balance to be utilized as a revenue source, like some districts do. Like I said, not that many do as maybe perhaps they once did, but we wanted to at least give you a snapshot of where our fund balance was as of June 30th. You can't even really say July 1st, but as of June 30th. This is not where our fund balance is today. Fund balance is fluid, it changes. It all depends on what your revenues are and your expenditures are, and those change as you progress through the year. You can take a snapshot and you can do projections, and we'll be looking at that at our next meeting perhaps. But this is where we were as of June 30th. Our total fund balance was $2.453 million. That encompasses a lot of different pieces of fund balance. That doesn't mean like we've got $2.5 million to do whatever we need to do with it. Some of that fund balance is what's considered now designated. They used to use the words appropriated and unappropriated. Now they use assigned and unassigned, designated, non-designated. Somebody had the great idea that changing the words would make it seem a little clearer. I think it just confuses people who finally got the old words, but whatever. So of our $2.453 million in fund balance as of June 30th, $703,709 is unappropriated, and that basically means that is a percentage of our budget for 11-12. You can carry up to 4% of your upcoming school year. This isn't quite 4%, but that is basically what's unappropriated. It is not earmarked for anything specific. We are allowed to carry that by law. Of the 2.4, you can see we appropriated 1.7 to offset the tax levy. If we didn't use that money to offset the tax levy, our tax levy would have been $1.7 million higher. That's basically how it works. Included in our fund balance are our reserves. Not the debt service reserve, but I do have it up there to show you. Included in that fund balance is our unemployment reserve, which as of June 30th had $24,000 in it. Not a lot of money left in there. So if you add up everything short of the debt service, you get the $2.453 million. The debt service reserve is our only other reserve fund, and that is housed in the debt service fund. So that would be utilized to pay down on existing debt service. We could consider utilizing that as a revenue source in any budget year. We have to expend that money prior to those bonds being defeased. Basically what it probably was money that was just unexpended out of previous capital project. So that has to stay in that reserve fund. It can't be put into the general fund, even though that would be nice. You could, though, it does sort of help the general fund because your debt service payments are in the general fund. If you think about it, at the end of the general fund, you'll see a debt service payment. So you can actually bring it in to offset that payment only. So in our case, we wouldn't be able to utilize more than what was, say we only had $50,000 in debt service, you could only bring in $50,000. Of course, we have way more than $288,000. But so those are all of our reserves, and so we don't have a lot of reserves to use as a revenue to offset the upcoming budget.
And keep in mind, one of Barb's earlier slides was talking about a plan for fund balance. I think part of what you look at here is our goal is to reduce the appropriated fund balance. Again, that becomes money that we have to come up with every year. So one of our goals for the future is to reduce that appropriated fund balance and then to determine what is going to be the appropriate dollar amount for the unappropriated fund balance. I don't think we always have to look at percentages when you look at the unappropriated or unassigned. I think you can look at a dollar amount, and part of that is looking at, typically districts don't spend that unless they're forced to spend it for some type of emergency. So we need to look at what level should we have an unassigned fund balance, and what dollar value should we place on that?
The other thing is we should really, in good years, it is smart to try to start to put away money into a reserve. And I know sometimes it's not a popular concept. People say, oh no, if you have extra money, you should give it back, or you shouldn't be doing that. But the truth is, everybody has a savings account. I mean, if you have no savings at home, you're either foolish or just unfortunate. I mean, we should in good times, if possible, have a repair reserve. That way, if you have an unfortunate problem, you can go and have that taken care of. It's nice to have a capital project reserve where you can start to save a little bit of money at a time, so that you can offset a capital project with some of your local money. So it's not the same as hoarding it and artificially inflating a tax levy. It's really more of incrementally saving, which most people find a conservative and smart way to manage their own personal life. And businesses and school districts, along with other municipalities, really should try very hard to have the same thought process. Superintendent took out my other slide. I wanted to torture you with it one more time. But basically, we want to leave in this portion just to explain. Now we're going to finally talk about the maximum allowable tax levy. We actually do have real numbers. So this slide you've seen before. Now I did call it, we've called it all along the preliminary tax levy limit calculation. Now we're calling it the final tax levy limit calculation. You have seen this exact slide. The numbers have not changed. So this is the tax levy limit that we are going to report to the comptroller on March 1st. This is basically the tax levy limit that we need to have prior to the exemptions or exclusions that we get to add back on top, which is going to determine the percentage of votes we need in order to pass our budget. This is the way our exclusions look like they're going to end up. You take the total levy limit for exclusions from the preceding slide, and you add on top of that our capital tax levy for the fiscal year that's upcoming. And in this case, it turns out to be relatively sizable at $773,000. I'll explain in the next slide how we got to that number. In addition to the capital tax levy exclusion, we will have the tax levy pension contribution in excess of 2%. For ERS only, there is no TRS exclusion for anybody. Our amount, our dollar amount works out to be the $41,478. I think you've seen that before. So you add the two together, you get $14,697. You take that number and add it to your total levy limit for exclusions, and you get what's called your tax levy limit plus exclusions. That is the total levy limit that we have. Now, the board can levy less money than that. That's certainly up to the board. That is the total levy with exclusions that we can levy.
That's under the majority vote, just the simple majority vote.
Simple majority. If you're going to exceed that, you will need 60% or more. So the capital tax levy, it's kind of a large number, so I thought we'd talk about it. That 773 is a combination of a couple different things, but what it basically is the difference between our projected building aid. Like I said, all aid is projected. This number is provided to us in our executive budget. It's basically our projected building aid, the difference between that and what we believe our debt service to be for 12-13. The increase in debt service in 12-13 is due to the capital project. We're borrowing more money, therefore we have to pay back more money. So therefore, our debt service goes up. Our aid is not flowing completely in line already with our debt service, and that's due to the fact that the way that building aid is going to be paid has changed. So it's not completely flowing in all of the projects. So the only part of the project that the aid is flowing on right now on the new project is that part of the debt that's associated with Boston Valley, the roofing project that we did this summer. The portion of the project that we did this past summer on the administration building is not aidable, so there's no aid on that anyway, so therefore it's not gonna flow. So it is, what is supposed to flow on the new project is already flowing, but on the money that we've already borrowed for the new project, that we have to pay back in this fiscal year and heretofore, we are not gonna start to receive aid on that until we've completed the project. Not gonna complete the project until, we're attempting to complete the project by project number as opposed to in a district-wide manner, which is the way almost all capital projects were done in the past, so that we can start to have aid flow through while we still have construction going on, which is a new concept and it's very cumbersome, but we're gonna try very hard to do that with our architects. And that will clearly be to our benefit. So, but right now, though, you're starting to already see there's gonna be a little bit of differential between what we have to pay back and what aid we're gonna get. So, all that being said, that difference, that 773 really is debt that we don't have any way to pay for other than through the real property tax levy.
And it's already been approved by the voters.
And it was already approved by the voters. That's the one thing that everybody has to bear in mind. When there was a proposition up that went before the voters and they approved it, they approved payment on that. Now we are obligated to pay that back. So we're in the position where now we have to go to the voters to ask them for that. The exemptions or the exclusions really are not optional. I mean, they could be, the board could make that decision. I would advise against it because the reason that they were made exclusions is because they're not an exclusionary repayment by the district. I mean, we have to pay it. So therefore, if we don't have any source of revenue, we don't have building aid on it, the only way we're gonna get money to pay make the payment that we're obligated to is to levy tax, and therefore it's considered an exclusion.
Was this figured in yet to the tax levy?
Well, let's circle back. No, that's why I want to have you go back and look at your revenue budget. If you go all the way down to the bottom, in red, you'll see phase one reductions budget gap. So what we've done is, on this form, is we've taken a look at what our total budget is with phase one reductions, and we calculated the levy. Now, we've gone ahead and subtracted off our maximum allowable levy plus exemptions. And then, remember in red, the 864, 329 now represents what would be the gap.
Okay, so our gap is now about $865,000
Yeah.
based on levy limit with exclusions. And that's,
With the exclusion of the capital.
Right, that's included, yes, that's
Okay.
factored in. If you go back, you can see that on the
Yeah,
preceding slide.
I know, you, but
yeah, and we're at, based on
not the
this,
best
that's,
numbers.
that's the
Okay, that's
maximum
right
we
there.
can levy under the majority vote, simple majority vote.
Right.
Okay.
And Barb, percentage-wise, what does that come out to be in terms of the maximum levy limit increase on the levy from last year to next year, from this year to next year
I
projected?
believe, I think actually I have it with me, I think it's 4.48%. I know, I have it here, oh, it's right here. Oh, I don't have it, but, I believe it's 4.48%.
Okay.
That's gonna be, that continues to be, despite the fact that you go through this so carefully
Yes.
and help us understand it, it's gonna be difficult for the population of the town to understand,
Yes.
because they've all heard 2%, 2%, 2%.
Which is very
And when it
important.
then is 4%, not 2%, they're gonna be saying, why are you giving us a 4%?
We are gonna spend a lot of time, we're not gonna be, when we do our budget presentation, our budget hearing, and when we go around and, have, an opportunity for people to come in and listen to us, we're not gonna be presenting the calculation in this manner. I mean, it's really, it's too long and lengthy. I don't wanna see people can't understand it, but you're gonna lose them in the first 5 minutes because it's, for most folks, relatively uninteresting. What we do wanna do is make sure that we present it in a manner where we can explain what the levy is and explain what the exclusions are and why they're important. I haven't sat down yet to really start to craft that with the superintendent, but we are fully aware of the fact that it is going to be a difficult task, and the media, for the most part, hasn't really helped us, or anybody for that matter, when they talk about it, because they do like to call it 2% tax cap. And now, as you all know, and the people that have been coming to these meetings know, that isn't what it is. There is a calculation within the whole process that does factor in 2%. That is not what the levy is going to be, and, and you'll find, I don't wanna say all, but I think we're gonna find most school districts are not going to be anywhere near the 2%.
They're not going to.
They're not going to be anywhere near it, yeah. Especially if you have debt. I mean, if you have debt service, if you've done capital projects, a lot of districts have done capital projects. The climate was very good over the past 4 years with interest rates being low, with building aid ratios being high. If you have debt service, you're gonna have exclusions, because it's just the way it's gonna work. You have exclusions, you're going to have a higher levy limit, because you have expense, so. But that is something we're very keenly aware of and are going to be paying a lot of attention to, trying to present in a manner that we can explain that.
Any questions on this part? I think it's been pretty comprehensive, a lot to digest, particularly now with that levy limit in the back of your head. What we'd like to do in preparation for next week, we have a week in between times now. We have a March 6th budget work session, a week from tonight right here. Part of what we're going to prepare is, again, I talked about it earlier, an analysis in terms of the reductions that have occurred over the last couple of years. So you can see what we've reduced and where we've reduced over the last couple of years. Second thing we like to do is now start preparing some options. Again, reducing a budget gap from 3.5 million to about 865 million is significant, and I think you can see that there's pain on both ends. It's not an easy process. So part of what we have to do right now is start looking at some options in which maybe there is other revenue growth that we can take a look at that we haven't seen right here that will help us offset the levy. And maybe there are some expenditure areas that we can start taking a look at for further reductions, again, based on our review of the criteria that are not going to have a significant impact on kids or programs that we have significant value in. So that's our objective for next week in terms of trying to, again, bring this gap to a close and at least give the board some more thought in terms of what it is and what direction we can go in to move the budget closer to closing the gap. In the meantime, we're continuing to meet internally with our folks and see if we can come up with some solutions there as well. So any questions or any other information you'd like to see for next week?
Yes, just, we do have a decline, and I know you've given them to us multiple times, and I know, with the numbers and the, where, like, just so everybody can see and everybody can, the exact numbers, like how many are you projecting declining in the high school?
Gotcha.
What's your projection of decline in the middle, well, the middle school is probably going up, which you said, and what's your projection of decline in the elementary, just so we have the numbers in front of the cuts,
building?
we could say, yeah.
Okay.
Well, we know we're losing, say, I'm just making up 4 teachers at Charlotte Avenue,
Right.
okay? We can see that Charlotte Avenue's numbers went down by,
Okay.
100 or whatever. I'm totally just throwing numbers right now, and, and now there's all this, and I do, this is a lot of good information, and every time but I think as a board, we might need to have dialogue, you know, and see if you can please, or if the principal
I can have it building by building, we'll compare
Yeah,
this
because you
year to
see-
projected next year.
we know that if, you know, enrollment's gone down, and, you know, we're increasing class sizes in every core subject, well, and I am not picking on any programs, because I'm sure I'll get emails tomorrow.
Mhm.
I'm just throwing them out there. 3 bands, 3 different choruses, I mean, if enrollment's declining, you know, you could have 1 band to accommodate all those, you know, and I'm not picking on
No,
bands.
no, I
You
understand.
know what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
And there
You
are
get
the
it.
special subject areas that when you
But-
decline in the number of classes you offer, that you may not need all of what's staffed there at that time.
Yeah, I mean, when we're saying we wanna increase class sizes and we wanna accommodate, we still wanna accommodate all these programs, I mean, I think we, as a board, and, you know, with all the information, can have the dialogue,
Yep, we'll
just
have
to
that by
say.
building next week, we'll do that by building next week.
Thank you.
Steve, I think there's another, an area I don't understand very well, but I think we sort of mentioned hearing more about at some point, is exactly how the guidance, psychology, social work interface works. I mean, I see them working in every school, but I don't understand quite what each of those categories cover and how that works out, as you say, in terms of,
Okay.
with decreasing enrollment. So that would be an area that
We have to
I'd
look.
like to hear a little bit
Okay.
more about.
Nobody wants to talk badly, but we
Right.
have to look at everything.
And with athletics, we have JV and varsity, so what about modified sports? I know some schools are looking at making cuts with that. What would the savings be? Because we still are offering JV and varsity.
Correct. And part of what we're looking to do is, I've asked our athletic director for a scenario of $50,000 reductions. I've also asked him to work with other school districts so that we have competition. They have it, we have it, and, you know, if there are certain teams that are being reduced, that we take a look at that. If there are certain areas, like modified, that are being reduced. And one of the difficulties is every district is at a different level. So some districts have freshman sports, have 9th grade teams that they can eliminate, and there's not a lot of 9th grade team competition, but they can continue modified JV and varsity. So we're trying to look at that in terms of what's best for our program and kids, what we'll be able to compete with, and who's gonna be able to compete with us as well. But that is under study. Anything else for next week? If you don't have anything right now, please feel free to call or email and give us some more information that you'd like to see. We'll make sure we have that together next week. Okay, that's all we have.
That's the end, so I can motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion?
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all very much.
She said she talked to Barb O'Brien. Well, maybe tomorrow she'll be sending
You
it.
guys need signatures, come on up, no problem.
No, but I have to.
Do you have any of us?
And I don't have to. Okay, I'm gonna feel the ice.
You even wrote stuff down.
Yeah, this one's so fun. Yeah, she was gonna get in there and it's like 2 hours. Well, the high school students liked it okay, but the Boston Valley kids adored it. The younger the better, I figure. Yeah. High school, you know, high school students, they're just funny. Yeah, it's good, it's really good. Well, I guess you better go home and continue on. All right, thanks. Oh, you too. Yeah, thank you for shouting.
Good job, everyone of us.
Read it. Everybody get a piece of pizza, you go, "You read it."
It's about, it's a hot
I'm a little bit disappointed that there are too many kids to have more than one round.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye, thank you.
Thanks.
I got the call at like 8:30, I'm like, I'm not even gonna